The following best practices illustrate the key steps for effective recruiting of key leadership hires. Both human resources and business leadership should partner to discuss and define each of the elements to ensure alignment and support of the recruiting plan and process. Definitive Guide to Recruiting, HBR, 2009. Anticipate your needs. Every 2 to 3 years, there should be a review of high-level leadership requirements based on the strategic plan. Some of the questions to answer here are: how many people will we need, and in what positions, in the next few years? What will the organizational structure look like? What must our leadership pipeline contain today to ensure that we find and develop tomorrow's leaders? Specify the job. For each leadership position identified, specify competencies needed in each role. For example, job-based. What capabilities will the job require? Team-based. Will the applicant need to manage political dynamics? Firm-based. What resources, supporting, talent, technology will the organization need to provide the person who fills this role? Develop the pool. Cast a wide net for candidates by asking suppliers, customers, board members, professional service providers, and trusted insiders for suggestions. It helps to start this process even before you have a role that you're hiring for. During succession planning and talent discussions internally, it helps to start making a list of internal and external contacts and potential candidates before the need arises. Assess the candidates. Have the hiring manager, the second-level manager, and the top HR manager conduct a behavioral event interview with each candidate. Candidates will describe experiences they've had that are like situations they'll face in the organization. Gain an understanding of how the candidate acted and the reasoning behind their actions. Make sure to evaluate a broad range of references to ask about results the candidate achieved. Exhibit 11.4 The Job Fair. A job fair, career fair, or career expo, like this one at the College of DuPage, is an event in which employers, recruiters, and schools give information to potential employees and job seekers attend hoping to make a good impression on potential employers. They also interact with potential coworkers by speaking face-to-face, exchanging resumes, and asking questions in an attempt to get a good feel for the work needed. Likewise, online job fairs give seekers another way to get in contact with probable employers using the internet. Credit. Tavi Burns /Flickr /Attribution 2.0 Generic, CC by 2.0. Close the deal. Once you have chosen the final candidate, you can increase the chance that the job offer will be accepted by sharing passion about the company and role and showing genuine interest in the candidate. Acknowledging the opportunities and challenges of the role, differentiating the opportunities at your organization from those of your competitor. Striking a creative balance between salary, bonuses, and other long-term incentives. Integrate the newcomer. It is important to integrate new hires into the company's culture. During the first few months, have the managers and the HR team check in with each new hire. Assign a mentor, star employee, to provide ongoing support to each new hire. Check in with the new hire to ensure that they're getting enough support and inquire about what other support might be needed. Ensure that new hires are adequately building new relationships throughout the organization. Acting with integrity. Clients, customers, suppliers, investors, retailers, employees, the media, the government, members of the surrounding community, competitors, and even the environment are stakeholders in a business. That is, they are individuals and entities affected by the business's decisions. Figure 1.2. Stakeholders typically value a leadership team that chooses the ethical way to accomplish the company's legitimate for-profit goals. For example, Patagonia expresses its commitment to environmentalism via its 1% for the Planet program, which donates 1% of all sales to help save the planet. In part because of this program, Patagonia has become a market leader in outdoor gear. Figure 1.2 stakeholders are the individuals and entities affected by a business's decisions, including clients, customers, suppliers, investors, retailers, employees, the media, the government, members of the surrounding community, the environment, and even competitors. Attribution. Copyright Rice University OpenStax under CC by 4.0 license. Being successful at work may therefore consist of much more than simply earning money and promotions. It may also mean treating our employees, customers, and clients with honesty and respect. It may come from the sense of pride we feel about engaging in honest transactions, not just because the law demands it, but because we demand it of ourselves. It may lie in knowing the profit we make does not come from shortchanging others. Thus, business ethics guides the conduct by which companies and their agents abide by the law and respect the rights of their stakeholders, particularly their customers, clients, employees, and the surrounding community and environment. Ethical business conduct permits us to sleep well at night. Link to learning. Are business ethics an oxymoron? Read Why Ethics Matter to understand just a few of the reasons to have values-driven management. Nearly all systems of religious belief stress the building blocks of engaging others with respect, empathy, and honesty. These foundational beliefs, in turn, prepare us for the codes of ethical behavior that serve as ideal guides for business and the professions. Still, we need not subscribe to any religious faith to hold that ethical behavior in business is still necessary. Just by virtue of being human, we all share obligations to one another, and principal among these is the requirement that we treat others with fairness and dignity, including in our commercial transactions. For this reason, we use the words ethics and morals interchangeably in this book, though some philosophers distinguish between them. We hold that an ethical person conveys the same sense as a moral person, and we do not regard religious belief as a requirement for acting ethically in business and the professions. Because we are all humans and in the same world, we should extend the same behavior to all. It is the right way to behave, but it also burnishes our own professional reputation as business leaders of integrity. Integrity, that is, unity between what we say and what we do, is a highly valued trait. But it is more than just consistency of character. Acting with integrity means we adhere strongly to a code of ethics, so it implies trustworthiness and incorruptibility. Being a professional of integrity means consistently striving to be the best person you can be in all your interactions with others. It means you practice what you preach, walk the talk, and do what you believe is right based upon reason. Integrity in business brings many advantages, not the least of which is that it is a critical factor in allowing business and society to function properly. Successful corporate leaders and the companies they represent will take pride in their enterprise if they engage in business with honesty and fair play. To treat customers, clients, employees, and all those affected by a firm with dignity and respect is ethical. In addition, laudable business practices serve the long-term interests of corporations. Why? Because customers, clients, employees, and society at large will much more willingly patronize a business and work hard on its behalf if that business is perceived as caring about the community it serves. And what type of firm has long-term customers and employees? One whose track record gives evidence of honest business practice. Link to learning. In this interview, Mark Ferris, a white-collar criminal convicted of fraud, claims that greed, arrogance, and ambition were motivating factors in his actions. He also discusses the human ability to rationalize our behavior to justify it to ourselves. Note his proposed solutions, practicing ethical leadership and developing awareness at an individual level via corporate training. Many people confuse legal and ethical compliance. They are, however, totally different and call for different standards of behavior. The concepts are not interchangeable in any sense of the word. The law is needed to establish and maintain a functioning society. Without it, our society would be in chaos. Compliance with these legal standards is strictly mandatory. If we violate these standards, we are subject to punishment as established by the law. Therefore, compliance in terms of business ethics generally refers to the extent to which a company conducts its business operations in accordance with applicable regulations, statutes, and laws. Yet this represents only a baseline minimum. Ethical observance builds on this baseline and reveals the principles of an individual business leader or a specific organization. Ethical acts are generally considered voluntary and personal, often based on our perception of or stand on right and wrong. Some professions, such as medicine and the law, have traditional codes of ethics. The Hippocratic Oath, for example, is embraced by most professionals in healthcare today as an appropriate standard always owed to patients by physicians, nurses, and others in the field. This obligation traces its lineage to ancient Greece and the physician Hippocrates. Business is different in not having a mutually shared standard of ethics. This is changing, however, as evidenced by the array of codes of conduct and mission statements many companies have adopted over the past century. These have many points in common, and their shared content may eventually produce a code universally claimed by business practitioners. What central point might constitute such a code? Essentially, a commitment to treat with honesty and integrity customers, clients, employees, and others affiliated with a business. The law is typically indebted to tradition and precedents, and compelling reasons are needed to support any change. Ethical reasoning often is more topical and reflects the changes in consciousness that individuals and society undergo. Often, ethical thought precedes and sets the stage for changes in the law. Behaving ethically requires that we meet the mandatory standards of the law, but that is not enough. For example, an action may be legal that we personally consider unacceptable. Companies today need to be focused not only on complying with the letter of the law, but also on going above and beyond that basic mandatory requirement to consider their stakeholders and do what is right. Link to learning. To see an example of a corporate ethical code or mission statement, visit Johnson & Johnson and read Our Credo, written by former Chair Robert Wood Johnson. Forbes provides an annual list of companies recently deemed the most ethical according to their standards and research. Ends, means, and character in business. How then should we behave? Philosophy and science help us answer this question. From philosophy, 3 different perspectives help us assess whether our decisions are ethical on the basis of reason. These perspectives are called normative ethical theories and focus on how people ought to behave. We discuss them in this chapter and in later chapters. In contrast, descriptive ethical theories are based on scientific evidence, primarily in the field of psychology, and describe how people tend to behave within a particular context. However, they are not the subject of this book. The first normative approach is to examine the ends, or consequences, a decision produces in order to evaluate whether those ends are ethical. Variations on this approach include utilitarianism, teleology, and consequentialism. For example, utilitarianism suggests that an ethical action is one whose consequence achieves the greatest good for the greatest number of people. So if we want to make an ethical decision, we should ask ourselves who is helped and who is harmed by it. Focusing on consequences in this way generally does not require us to take into account the means of achieving that particular end, however. That fact leads us to the second normative theory about what constitutes ethical conduct. The second approach does examine the means or actions we use to carry out a business decision. An example of this approach is deontology, which essentially suggests that it is the means that lend nobility to the ends. Deontology contends that each of us owes certain duties to others. Deon is a Greek word for duty or obligation, and that certain universal rules apply to every situation and bind us to these duties. In this view, whether our actions are ethical depends only on whether we adhere to these rules. Thus, the means we use is the primary determinant of ethical conduct. The thinker most closely associated with deontology is the 18th century German philosopher Immanuel Kant, Figure 1.3. Figure 1.3 Immanuel Kant was an 18th century philosopher now associated with deontology, who spent nearly all his professional life teaching at the university in Königsberg, which today is Kaliningrad, the westernmost point in Russia. Credit right. Modification of Kant photo by Becker /Wikimedia Commons, public domain. The third normative approach, typically called virtue theory, focuses on the character of the decision-maker, a character that reflects the training we receive growing up. In this view, our ethical analysis of a decision is intimately connected with the person we choose to be. It is through the development of habits, the routine actions in which we choose to engage, that we are able to create a character of integrity and make ethical decisions. Put differently, if a 2-year-old is taught to take care of and return borrowed toys, even though this runs contrary to every instinct they have, they may continue to perfect their ethical behavior so that at age 40, they can be counted on to safeguard the tens of millions of dollars investors have entrusted to their care in brokerages. Virtue theory has its roots in the Greek philosophical tradition, whose followers sought to learn how to live a flourishing life through study, teaching, and practice. The cardinal virtues to be practiced were courage, self-control, justice, and wisdom. Socrates was often cited as a sage and a role model whose conduct in life was held in high regard. Ethics across time and cultures. Aristotle and the concept of phronesis, or practical wisdom. Phronesis, is a type of practical wisdom that enables us to act virtuously. In The Big Idea, The Wise Leader, a Harvard Business Review article on leadership and ethical decision-making, Ikujiro Nanaka, a Japanese organizational theorist, and Hirotaka Takeuchi, a professor of management practice at Harvard Business School, discussed the gap between the theory and practice of ethics and which characteristics make a wise leader. One, the authors conclude that the use of explicit and tacit knowledge isn't enough. Chief executive officers, CEOs, must also draw on a third, often forgotten kind of knowledge, called practical wisdom. Practical wisdom is tacit knowledge acquired from experience that enables people to make prudent judgments and take actions based on the actual situation, guided by values and morals. The concept of practical wisdom dates back to Aristotle, who considered phronesis, which can also be defined as prudence, to be a key intellectual virtue. Phronesis enables people to make ethically sound judgments. According to the authors, phronetic leaders practice moral discernment in every situation, making judgments for the common good that are guided by their individual values and ethics. Quickly assess situations and envision the consequences of possible actions or responses. Create a shared sense of purpose among executives and employees and inspire people to work together in pursuit of a common goal. Engage as many people as possible in conversation and communicate using metaphors, stories, and other figurative language in a way that everyone can understand. And encourage practical wisdom in others and support the training of employees at all levels in its use. In essence, the first question any company should ask itself is, do we have a moral purpose? Having a moral purpose requires focusing on the common good, which precedes the accumulation of profit and results in economic and social benefits. If companies seek the common good, profits generally will follow. Critical thinking. In the article cited, the authors stress the importance of being well-versed in the liberal arts, such as philosophy, history, literature, and in the fine arts to cultivate judgment. How do you think a strong background in the liberal arts would impart practical wisdom or help you make ethical decisions? Profitability and success. Thinking long-term. Decades ago, some management theorists argued that a conscientious manager in a for-profit setting acts ethically by emphasizing solely the maximization of earnings. Today, most commentators contend that ethical business leadership is grounded in doing right by all stakeholders directly affected by a firm's operations, including, but not limited to, stockholders or those who own shares of the company's stock. That is, business leaders do right when they give thought to what is best for all who have a stake in their companies. Not only that, firms actually reap greater material success when they take such an approach, especially over the long run. Nobel Prize winning economist Milton Friedman stated in a now famous New York Times Magazine article in 1970 that the only social responsibility of a business is to increase its profits. This concept took hold in business and even in business school education. However, although it is certainly permissible and even desirable for a company to pursue profitability as a goal, managers must also have an understanding of the context within which their business operates and of how the wealth they create can add positive value to the world. The context within which they act is society, which permits and facilitates a firm's existence. Thus, a company enters a social contract with society as whole, an implicit agreement among all members to cooperate for social benefits. Even as a company pursues the maximizing of stockholder profit, it must also acknowledge that all of society will be affected to some extent by its operations. In return for society's permission to incorporate and engage in business, a company owes a reciprocal obligation to do what is best for as many of society's members as possible, regardless of whether they are stockholders. Therefore, when applied specifically to a business, the social contract implies that a company gives back to the society that permits it to exist, benefiting the community at the same time it enriches itself. Link to learning. What happens when a bank decides to break the social contract? This press conference held by the National Whistleblower Center describes the events surrounding the $104 million whistleblower award given to former UBS employee Bradley Birkenfeld by the U.S. Internal Revenue Service. While employed at UBS, Switzerland's largest bank, Birkenfeld assisted in the company's illegal offshore tax business, and he later served 40 months in prison for conspiracy. But he was also the original source of incriminating information that led to a Federal Bureau of Investigation examination of the bank and to the U.S. government's decision to impose a $780 million fine on UBS in 2009. In addition, Birkenfeld turned over to investigators the account information of more than 4,500 U.S. private clients of UBS. 3. In addition to taking this more nuanced view of profits, managers must also use a different time frame for obtaining them. Wall Street's focus on periodic, i.e., quarterly and annual, earnings has led many managers to adopt a short-term perspective, which fails to take into account effects that require a longer time to develop. For example, charitable donations in the form of corporate assets or employees' volunteered time may not show a return on investment until a sustained effort has been maintained for years. A long-term perspective is a more balanced view of profit maximization that recognizes that the impacts of a business decision may not manifest for a longer time. As an example, consider the business practices of Toyota when it first introduced its vehicles for sale in the United States in 1957. For many years, Toyota was content to sell its cars at a slight loss because it was accomplishing two business purposes. It was establishing a long-term relationship of trust with those who eventually would become its loyal U.S. customers. And it was attempting to disabuse U.S. consumers of their belief that items made in Japan were cheap and unreliable. The company accomplished both goals by patiently playing its long game, a key aspect of its operational philosophy, the Toyota Way, which includes a specific emphasis on long-term business goals, even at the expense of short-term profit. 4. What contributes to a corporation's positive image over the long term? Many factors contribute, including a reputation for treating customers and employees fairly and for engaging in business honestly. Companies that act in this way may emerge from any industry or country. Examples include Fluor, the large U.S. engineering and design firm, Illycaf, the Italian food and beverage purveyor, Marriott, the giant U.S. hotelier, and Nokia, the Finnish telecommunications retailer. The upshot is that when consumers are looking for an industry leader to patronize and would-be employees are seeking a firm to join, companies committed to ethical business practices are often the first to come to mind. Why should stakeholders care about a company acting above and beyond the ethical and legal standards set by society? Simply put, being ethical is simply good business. A business is profitable for many reasons, including expert management teams, focused and happy employees, and worthwhile products and services that meet consumer demand. One more and very important reason is that they maintain a company philosophy and mission to do good for others. Year after year, the nation's most admired companies are also among those that had the highest profit margins. Going green, funding charities, and taking a personal interest in employee happiness levels adds to the bottom line. Consumers want to use companies that care for others and our environment. During the years 2008 and 2009, many unethical companies went bankrupt. However, those companies that avoided the quick buck, risky and unethical investments, and other unethical business practices often flourished. If nothing else, consumer feedback on social media sites such as Yelp and Facebook can damage an unethical company's prospects. Cases from the real world. Competition and the markers of business success. Perhaps you are still thinking about how you would define success in your career. For our purposes here, let us say that success consists simply of achieving our goals. We each have the ability to choose the goals we hope to accomplish in business, of course, and if we have chosen them with integrity, our goals and the actions we take to achieve them will be in keeping with our character. Warren Buffett, Figure 1.4, whom many consider the most successful investor of all time, is an exemplar of business excellence as well as a good potential role model for professionals of integrity and the art of thinking long-term. He had the following to say: ultimately, there's one investment that supersedes all others. Invest in yourself. Nobody can take away what you've got in yourself, and everybody has potential they haven't used yet. You'll have a much more rewarding life not only in terms of how much money you make, but how much fun you have out of life. You'll make more friends the more interesting person you are, so go to it, invest in yourself. 5. Figure 1.4 Warren Buffett, shown here with President Barack Obama in June 2010, is an investor and philanthropist who was born in 1930 in Omaha, Nebraska. Through his leadership of Berkshire Hathaway, he has become one of the most successful investors in the world and one of the wealthiest people in the United States, with an estimated total net worth of almost $80 billion. Credit: President Barack Obama and Warren Buffett in the Oval Office, by Pete Souza / Wikimedia Commons, public domain. The primary principle under which Buffett instructs managers to operate is: do nothing you would not be happy to have an unfriendly but intelligent reporter write about on the front page of a newspaper. 6. This is a very simple and practical guide to encouraging ethical business behavior on a personal level. Buffett offers another, equally wise, principle: lose money for the firm, even a lot of money, and I will be understanding. Lose reputation for the firm, even a shred of reputation, and I will be ruthless. 7. As we saw in the example of Toyota, the importance of establishing and maintaining trust in the long term cannot be underestimated. Link to learning. For more on Warren Buffett's thoughts about being both an economic and ethical leader, watch this interview that appeared on the PBS NewsHour on June 6, 2017. Stockholders, stakeholders, and goodwill. Earlier in this chapter, we explained that stakeholders are all the individuals and groups affected by a business's decisions. Among these stakeholders are stockholders or shareholders, individuals and institutions that own stock or shares in a corporation. Understanding the impact of a business decision on the stockholder and various other stakeholders is critical to the ethical conduct of business. Indeed, prioritizing the claims of various stakeholders in the company is one of the most challenging tasks business professionals face. Considering only stockholders can often result in unethical decisions. The impact on all stakeholders must be considered and rationally assessed. Managers do sometimes focus predominantly on stockholders, especially those holding the largest number of shares, because these powerful individuals and groups can influence whether managers keep their jobs or are dismissed, e.g., when they are held accountable for the company's missing projected profit goals. And many believe the sole purpose of a business is, in fact, to maximize stockholders' short-term profits. However, considering only stockholders and short-term impacts on them is one of the most common errors business managers make. It is often in the long-term interests of a business not to accommodate stock owners alone, but rather to take into account a broad array of stakeholders and the long-term and short-term consequences for a course of action. Here is a simple strategy for considering all your stakeholders in practice. Divide your screen or page into 3 columns. In the first column, list all stakeholders in order of perceived priority, figure 1.5. Some individuals and groups play more than one role. For instance, some employees may be stockholders, some members of the community may be suppliers, and the government may be a customer of the firm. In the second column, list what you think each stakeholder group's interests and goals are. For those that play more than one role, choose the interests most directly affected by your actions. In the third column, put the likely impact of your business decision on each stakeholder. This basic spreadsheet should help you identify all your stakeholders and evaluate your decision's impact on their interests. If you would like to add a human dimension to your analysis, try assigning some of your colleagues to the role of stakeholders and re-examine your analysis. Figure 1.5. Imagine you are the CEO of a mid-sized firm, about 500 employees, and your company is publicly traded. To understand what matters most to all your stakeholders, complete the preceding exercise to evaluate the impact of a particular action or decision. Attribution. Copyright Rice University, OpenStax, under CC by 4.0 license. The positive feeling stakeholders have for any particular company is called goodwill, which is an important component of almost any business entity, even though it is not directly attributable to the company's assets and liabilities. Among other intangible assets, goodwill might include the worth of a business's reputation, the value of its brand name, the intellectual capital and attitude of its workforce, and the loyalty of its established customer base. Even being socially responsible generates goodwill. The ethical behavior of managers will have a positive influence on the value of each of those components. Goodwill cannot be earned or created in a short time, but it can be the key to success and profitability. A company's name, its corporate logo, and its trademark will necessarily increase in value as stakeholders view that company in a more favorable light. A good reputation is essential for success in the modern business world, and with information about the company and its actions readily available via mass media and the internet, e.g., on public rating sites such as Yelp, management's values are always subject to scrutiny and open debate. These values affect the environment outside and inside the company. The corporate culture, for instance, consists of shared beliefs, values, and behaviors that create the internal or organizational context within which managers and employees interact. Practicing ethical behavior at all levels, from CEO to upper and middle management to general employees, helps cultivate an ethical corporate culture and ethical employee relations. What would you do? Structure look like? Which corporate culture do you value? Imagine that upon graduation you have the good fortune to be offered 2 job opportunities. The first is with a corporation known to cultivate a hard-nosed, no-nonsense business culture in which keeping long hours and working intensely are highly valued. At the end of each year, the company donates to numerous social and environmental causes. The second job opportunity is with a nonprofit recognized for a very different culture based on its compassionate approach to employee work-life balance. It also offers the chance to pursue your own professional interests or volunteerism during a portion of every workday. The first job offer pays 20% more per year. Critical thinking. Which of these opportunities would you pursue and why? How important an attribute is salary, and at what point would a higher salary override for you the non-monetary benefits of the lower-paid position? Positive goodwill generated by ethical business practices, in turn, generates long-term business success. As recent studies have shown, the most ethical and enlightened companies in the United States consistently outperform their competitors. 8. Thus, viewed from the proper long-term perspective, conducting business ethically is a wise business decision that generates goodwill for the company among stakeholders, contributes to a positive corporate culture, and ultimately supports profitability. You can test the validity of this claim yourself. When you choose a company with which to do business, what factors influence your choice? Let us say you are looking for a financial advisor for your investments and retirement planning, and you have found several candidates whose credentials, experience, and fees are approximately the same. Yet one of these firms stands above the others because it has a reputation, which you discover is well-earned, for telling clients the truth and recommending investments that seemed centered on the client's benefit and not on potential profit for the firm. Wouldn't this be the one you would trust with your investments? Or suppose one group of financial advisors has a long track record of giving back to the community of which it is part. It donates to charitable organizations in local neighborhoods, and its members volunteer service hours toward worthy projects in town. Would this group not strike you as the one worthy of your investments? That it appears to be committed to building up the local community might be enough to persuade you to give it your business. This is exactly how a long-term investment in community goodwill can produce a long pipeline of potential clients and customers. Cases from the real world. The Equifax data breach. In 2017, from mid-May to July, hackers gained unauthorized access to servers used by Equifax, a major credit reporting agency, and accessed the personal information of nearly one-half the U.S. population. 9 Equifax executives sold off nearly $2 million of company stock they owned after finding out about the hack in late July, weeks before it was publicly announced on September 7, 2017, in potential violation of insider trading rules. The company's shares fell nearly 14% after the announcement, but few expect Equifax managers to be held liable for their mistakes, face any regulatory discipline, or pay any penalties for profiting from their actions. To make amends to customers and clients in the aftermath of the hack, the company offered free credit monitoring and identity theft protection. On September 15, 2017, the company's chief information officer and chief of security retired. On September 26, 2017, the CEO resigned, days before he was to testify before Congress about the breach. To date, numerous government investigations and hundreds of private lawsuits have been filed as a result of the hack. Critical thinking. Which elements of this case might involve issues of legal compliance? Which elements illustrate acting legally but not ethically? What would acting ethically and with personal integrity in this situation look like? How do you think this breach will affect Equifax's position relative to those of its competitors? How might it affect the future success of the company? Was it sufficient for Equifax to offer online privacy protection to those whose personal information was hacked? What else might it have done? A brief introduction to corporate social responsibility. If you truly appreciate the positions of your various stakeholders, you will be well on your way to understanding the concept of corporate social responsibility, CSR. CSR is the practice by which a business views itself within a broader context, as a member of society with certain implicit social obligations and environmental responsibilities. As previously stated, there is a distinct difference between legal compliance and ethical responsibility, and the law does not fully address all ethical dilemmas that businesses face. CSR ensures that a company is engaging in sound ethical practices and policies in accordance with the company's culture and mission, above and beyond any mandatory legal standards. A business that practices CSR cannot have maximizing shareholder wealth as its sole purpose, because this goal would necessarily infringe on the rights of other stakeholders in the broader society. For instance, a mining company that disregards its corporate social responsibility may infringe on the right of its local community to clean air and water if it pursues only profit. In contrast, CSR places all stakeholders within a proper contextual framework. An additional perspective to take concerning CSR is that ethical business leaders opt to do good at the same time that they do well. This is a simplistic summation, but it speaks to how CSR plays out within any corporate setting. The idea is that a corporation is entitled to make money, but it should not only make money. It should also be a good civic neighbor and commit itself to the general prospering of society as a whole. It ought to make the communities of which it is part better at the same time it pursues legitimate profit goals. These ends are not mutually exclusive, and it is possible, indeed, praiseworthy, to strive for both. When a company approaches business in this fashion, it is engaging in a commitment to corporate social responsibility. Link to learning. U.S. entrepreneur Blake Mycoskie has created a unique business model combining both for-profit and non-profit philosophies in an innovative demonstration of corporate social responsibility. The company he founded, Tom's Shoes, donates one pair of shoes to a child in need for every pair sold. As of May 2018, the company has provided more than 75 million pairs of shoes to children in 70 countries. 10. Business people sometimes apply different ethical standards in different contexts, especially if they are working in a culture different from the one in which they were raised or with coworkers from other traditions. If we look outside ourselves for ethical guidance, relying on the context in which we find ourselves, we can grow confused about what is ethical business behavior. Stakeholders then observe that the messages we send via our conduct lack a consistent ethical core, which can harm our reputation and that of the business. To avoid falling back on ethical relativism, a philosophy according to which there is no right or wrong and what is ethical depends solely on the context, we must choose a coherent standard we can apply to all our interactions with others. Some people who adopt multiple ethical standards may choose to exhibit the highest standards with their families, because these are the people they most revere. In a business setting, however, this same person may choose to be an unethical actor whose sole goal is the ruthless accumulation of wealth by any means. Because work and family are not the only two settings in which we live our lives, such a person may behave according to yet another standard to competitors in a sporting event, to strangers on the street, or to those in his or her religious community. Although the ethical standard we adopt is always a choice, certain life experiences can have more profound effects on our choice than others. Among the most formative experiences are family upbringing and cultural traditions, broadly defined here to include religious and ethnic norms, the standard patterns of behavior within the context in which we live. Culture and family also influence each other because the family exists in and responds to its cultural context, as well as providing us with the bedrock for our deepest values. Regardless of this initial coding, however, we can choose the ethical standards we apply in the business context. Why should we choose a single ethical code for all the contexts in which we live? The Greek philosophers and later proponents of the normative ethical theories we discussed earlier would say that if you apply your reason to determine how to behave, it makes rational sense to abide by a single ethical code for all interactions with all persons in all contexts. By doing so, you maximize your ethical behavior no matter who the other party is. Furthermore, you have an internally consistent behavior for all family, friends, customers, clients, and anyone else with whom you interact. Thus, we need not choose different values in different contexts, and when people see us in different situations, they are more likely to trust us because they see we uphold the same values regardless of the context. Indeed, proponents of all the normative ethical theories would insist that the only rational choice is to have a single ethical standard. A deontologist would argue that you should adhere to particular duties in performing your actions, regardless of the parties with whom you interact. A utilitarian would say that any act you take should result in the greatest good for the greatest number. A virtue ethicist would state that you cannot be virtuous if you lack integrity in your behavior toward all. Adopting a consistent ethical standard is both selfless and in the manager's self-interest. That is, would-be customers and clients are more likely to seek out a business that treats all with whom it interacts with honesty and fairness, believing that they themselves will be treated likewise by that firm. Similarly, business leaders who treat everyone in a trustworthy manner need never worry that they might not have impressed a potential customer because they always engage in honorable commercial practices. A single standard of business behavior that emphasizes respect and good service appeals to all. Normative ethics is about discovering right and delineating it from wrong. It is a way to develop the rules and norms we use to guide meaningful decision-making. The ethics in our single code are not relative to the time, person, or place. In this world, we all wear different hats as we go about our daily lives as employees, parents, leaders, students. Being a truly ethical person requires that no matter what hat we wear, we exhibit a single ethical code and that it includes, among others, such universal principles of behavior as honesty, integrity, loyalty, fairness, respect for law, and respect for others. Yet another reason to adopt a universal ethical standard is the transparent character it nurtures in us. If a company's leadership insists that it stands for honest business transactions at every turn, it cannot prosecute those who defraud the company and look the other way when its own officers do the same. Stakeholders recognize such hypocrisy and rightly hold it against the business's leaders. Business leaders are not limited to only one of the normative ethical theories we have described, however. Virtue theory, utilitarianism, and deontology all have advantages to recommend them. Still, what should not change is a corporate commitment to not make exceptions in its practices when those favor the company at the expense of customers, clients, or other stakeholders. Moving from theory to daily life, we can also look at the way our reputation is established by the implicit and explicit messages we send to others. If we adopt ethical relativism, friends, family, and coworkers will notice that we use different standards for different contexts. This lack of consistency and integrity can alter their perception of us and likely damage our reputation. What would you do? Structure look like? Taking advantage of an employee discount. Suppose you work in retail sales for an international clothing company. A perk of the job is an employee discount of 25% on all merchandise you purchase for personal use. Your cousin, who is always looking for a bargain, approaches you in the store one day and implores you to give him your employee discount on a $100 purchase of clothes for himself. Questions are brewing at Starbucks. March 30th, 2011, marked the 40th anniversary of Starbucks' first store opening for business in Seattle, Washington. From its humble beginnings, Starbucks grew to become the largest coffeehouse company in the world while stressing the importance of both financial and social goals. As it created thousands of stores across dozens of countries, the company navigated many interesting periods. The last few years were a particularly fascinating era. Figure 2.1 Starbucks' global empire includes the store in Seoul, South Korea. In early 2007, Starbucks appeared to be very successful, and its stock was worth more than $35 per share. By 2008, however, the economy was slowing, competition in the coffee business was heating up, and Starbucks' performance had become disappointing. In a stunning reversal of fortune, The firm's stock was worth less than $10 per share by the end of the year. Anxious stockholders wondered whether Starbucks' decline would continue or whether the once high-flying company would return to its winning ways. Riding to the rescue was Howard Schultz, the charismatic and visionary founder of Starbucks who had stepped down as chief executive officer 8 years earlier. Schultz again took the helm and worked to turn the company around by emphasizing its mission statement, to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, and one neighborhood at a time. About 1,000 underperforming stores were shut down permanently. Thousands of other stores closed for a few hours so that baristas could be retrained to make inspiring drinks. Food offerings were revamped to ensure that coffee, not breakfast sandwiches, were the primary aroma that tantalized customers within Starbucks' outlets. By the time Starbucks' 40th anniversary arrived, Schultz had led his company to regain excellence, and its stock price was back above $35 per share. In March 2011, Schultz summarized the situation by noting that over the last 3 years, we've completely transformed the company, and the health of Starbucks is quite good. But I don't think this is a time to celebrate or run some victory lap. We've got a lot of work to do. Indeed, important questions loomed. Could performance improve further? How long would Schultz remain with the company? Could Schultz's eventual successor maintain Schultz's entrepreneurial approach as well as keep Starbucks focused on its mission? The importance of vision. Good business leaders create a vision, articulate the vision, passionately own the vision, and relentlessly drive it to completion. Jack Welch, former CEO of General Electric. Many skills and abilities separate effective strategic leaders like Howard Schultz from poor strategic leaders. One of them is the ability to inspire employees to work hard to improve their organization's performance. Effective strategic leaders are able to convince employees to embrace lofty ambitions and move the organization forward. In contrast, poor strategic leaders struggle to rally their people and channel their collective energy in a positive, focused direction. As the quote from Jack Welch suggests, a vision is one key tool available to executives to inspire the people in an organization. Figure 2.2, the big picture, organizational vision. An organization's vision describes what the organization hopes to become in the future. Well-constructed visions clearly articulate an organization's aspirations. Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Edwards, 2012. Google expands on its mission by listing 10 things we know, including focus on the user and all else will follow, it's best to do one thing really, really well, and fast is better than slow. Google Incorporated, 2014. Figure 2.2 The big picture, organizational vision, image description. This brief but powerful statement emphasizes several aims that are important to Google, including excellence in customer service and setting high standards for employees and Google's products. McDonald's brand mission is to be our customers' favorite place and way to eat. Our worldwide operations are aligned around a global strategy called the Plan to Win, which center on an exceptional customer experience, people, products, place, price, and promotion. We are committed to continuously improving our operations and enhancing our customers' experience. To be effective, this mission statement must filter down to all employees and inspire them to adopt that mission. Edwards, 2012. One limitation of such all-encompassing goals is that frontline and operational employees will not relate or connect with the goals and will disengage from the process. Flavor of the month. The CEO/management team who can effectively translate the high-level objectives to on-the-ground activities will have good success in engaging staff. Of course, a strong element of walk the talk is required by management as well. And make it universally accessible and useful. Edwards, 2012. Google expands on its mission by listing 10 things we know, including focus on the user and all else will follow. It's best to do one thing really, really well, and fast is better than slow, Google Incorporated, 2014. The results of a survey of 1,500 executives illustrate how the need to create an inspiring vision creates a tremendous challenge for executives. When asked to identify the most important characteristics of effective strategic leaders, 98% of the executives listed a strong sense of vision first. Meanwhile, 90% of the executives expressed serious doubts about their own ability to create a vision. Not surprisingly, many organizations do not have formal visions. Many organizations that do have visions find that employees do not embrace and pursue the visions. Having a well-formulated vision that employees embrace can therefore give an organization an edge over its rivals. Mission statements. At WestJet, Clive Beddoe and his team developed its mission statement to enrich the lives of everyone in WestJet's world by providing safe, friendly, and affordable air travel. A mission such as WestJet states the reasons for an organization's existence. Well-written mission statements effectively capture an organization's identity and provide answers to the fundamental question, who are we? While a vision looks to the future, a mission captures the key elements of the organization's past and present. Figure 2.3. Missions, Image Description. Organizations need support from their key stakeholders, such as employees, owners, suppliers, and customers, if they are to prosper. A mission statement which engages stakeholders will help develop an understanding of why they should support the organization and make clear what important role or purpose the organization plays in society, also called a social license to operate. Google's mission, for example, is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Google pursued this mission in its early days by developing a very popular internet search engine. The firm continues to serve its mission through various strategic actions, including offering its internet browser Google Chrome to the online community, providing free email via its Gmail service, and making books available online for browsing. In ancient times, Aesop said, "United we stand, divided we fall." This provides a helpful way of thinking about the relationship between vision and mission. Executives ask for trouble if their organization's vision and mission are divided by emphasizing different domains. Some universities have fallen into this trap. Many large public universities were established in the late 1800s with missions that centered on educating citizens. As the 20th century unfolded, however, creating scientific knowledge through research became increasingly important to these universities. Many university presidents responded by creating visions centered on building the scientific prestige of their schools. This created a dilemma for professors. Should they devote most of their time and energy to teaching students, as the mission required, or on their research studies, as ambitious presidents demanded via their visions? Some universities continue to struggle with this trade-off today and remain houses divided against themselves. In some, an organization is more effective to the extent that its vision and its mission target employees' effort in the same direction. Pursuing the vision and mission through SMART goals. An organization's vision and mission combined offer a broad, overall sense of the organization's direction. To work toward achieving these overall aspirations, organizations also need to create goals, narrower aims that should provide clear and tangible guidance to employees as they perform their work on a daily basis. The most effective goals are those that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. An easy way to remember these dimensions is to combine the first letter of each into one word, SMART. Figure 2.4, Creating SMART Goals. Employees are in a much better position to succeed to the extent that an organization's goals are SMART. A goal is specific if it is explicit rather than vague. WestJet's vision is that, by 2016, WestJet will be one of the 5 most successful international airlines in the world, providing our guests with a friendly, caring experience that will change air travel forever. A goal is measurable to the extent that whether the goal is achieved can be quantified. WestJet's goal of being one of the 5 most successful international airlines in the world by 2016 offers very simple and clear measurability. Either WestJet will be in the top 5 by 2016 or they will not. A goal is aggressive if achieving it presents a significant, as opposed to easy, challenge to the organization. A series of research studies have demonstrated that performance is strongest when goals are challenging but attainable. Such goals force people to test and extend the limits of their abilities. This can result in reaching surprising heights. WestJet committed to growing responsibly and ensuring that it is an environmentally sustainable airline and supports the ITA goal of carbon-neutral growth in its industry beyond 2020. WestJet already operates one of the most modern and fuel-efficient fleets in North America. Achieving carbon-neutral growth will be a challenge for WestJet, requiring the combined efforts of the airline and its supplier partners such as aircraft manufacturers, airports, and government. In 2012, WestJet reported that our significant investments in fleet and technology have greatly improved our aircraft fuel efficiency and ability to operate our business more cost-effectively. Between 2000 and 2012, we improved our fuel efficiency by 44.8% per revenue ton kilometer. The resulting fuel savings are equivalent to the amount of fuel that would have been used to fly a Boeing Next Generation 737 from Calgary to Toronto and back approximately 44,135 times, based on our 2012 fuel usage. Quigley, 1994. It is useful to know that easily achievable goals are not only easy, but they tend to undermine overall motivation and effort by employees, Michelangelo said. The greater danger for most of us lies not in setting our aim too high and falling short, but in setting our aim too low and achieving our mark. Consider a situation in which you have done so well in a course that you only need a score of 60% on the final exam to earn an A for the course. Understandably, few students would study hard enough to score 90% or 100% on the final exam under these circumstances. Similarly, setting organizational goals that are easy to reach encourages employees to work just hard enough to reach the goals. Figure 2.4 Creating SMART Goals, Image Description. It is tempting to extend this logic and thinking to conclude that setting nearly impossible goals will encourage even stronger effort and performance from staff. However, people act rationally and tend to become discouraged and give up when faced with goals that realistically have little chance of being reached. If, for example, Starbucks had set a time frame of 1 year to regain a share price of $35, it would have attracted scorn. The company simply could not be turned around that quickly. Similarly, if WestJet's fuel efficiency goal was 100% improvement, WestJet's employees would probably not embrace it. Thus, goals must also be realistic, meaning that their achievement is feasible. Most of us have found that deadlines are motivating and that they help you structure your work time. The same is true for organizations, leading to the conclusion that goals should be time-bound through the creation of deadlines. WestJet has set a goal to achieve a cumulative 45% improvement in fuel efficiency for our 737 fleet by 2020, as compared to the 2000 base year. WestJet, 2012. The period after an important goal is reached is often overlooked but is critical. Will an organization rest on its laurels, or will it take on new challenges? Starbucks provides an illustrative example. In 2011, after a revamp of the company's stores and services, the stock price was around $35. In early 2014, the price was in the $70 range. Key takeaway. Strategic leaders need to ensure that their organizations have 3 types of aims. A vision states what the organization aspires to become in the future. A mission reflects the organization's past and present by stating why the organization exists and what role it plays in society. Goals are the more specific aims that organizations pursue to reach their visions and missions. The best goals are SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. Organizational performance, a complex concept. Have you ever been to an archery range and shot arrows at the target? If you have, you already understand the basics of organizational performance. You aim at the center of the target, bullseye. But the most important part of each shot is the assessment of whether you are high, low, too far left, or too far right, feedback on your performance. For businesses, organizational performance refers to how well an organization is doing in reaching its vision, mission, and goals. Assessing organizational performance is a vital aspect of strategic management. Executives must know how well their organizations are performing to figure out what strategic changes, if any, to make. Performance is a very complex concept, however, and a lot of attention needs to be paid to how it is assessed. Two important considerations are 1. Performance measures and 2. Performance referent. Figure 2.5, how organizations and individuals can use financial performance measures and reference. Performance measures are metrics along which organizations can be gauged. Most executives, investor, and stakeholders watch and examine measures such as profits, stock price, and sales in an attempt to better understand how well their organizations are competing in the market as well as future predicted results. But these measures provide just a glimpse of organizational performance. Performance reference are also needed to assess whether an organization is doing well. A performance referent is a benchmark or standard used to make sense of an organization's standing along a performance measure. Suppose, for example, that a firm has a profit margin of 20% in 2011. This might sound great on the surface. But suppose that the firm's profit margin the year before, in 2010, was 35% and that the average profit margin across all firms in the industry for 2011 was 40%. Viewed relative to these two references, the firm's 2011 performance is cause for concern. Using a variety of performance measures and reference is valuable because different measures and reference provide different information about an organization's functioning. As well, many commonly used measures, including accounting ratios, are highly past-focused. These indicators show stakeholders the end results of past decisions, but do little to predict future firm performance. Strongly managed organizations must develop a deep understanding of what events or actions support strong, performance, i.e., increased product training for sales force leads to increased sales the following quarter, and then ensure these measure these as well. The parable of the blind men and the elephant, popularized in Western cultures through a poem by John Godfrey Saxe in the 19th century, is useful for understanding the complexity associated with measuring organizational performance. As the story goes, 6 blind men set out to see what an elephant was like. The first man touched the elephant's side and believed the beast to be like a great wall. The second felt the tusks and thought elephants must be like spears. Feeling the trunk, the third man thought it was a type of snake. Feeling a limb, the fourth man thought it was like a tree trunk. The fifth, examining an ear, thought it was like a fan. The sixth, touching the tail, thought it was like a rope. If the men failed to communicate their different impressions, they would have all been partially right, but wrong about what ultimately mattered. Figure 2.5 Financial Performance Measures and Reference for Organizations and Individuals. How organizations and individuals can use financial performance measures and reference. Types of measures. Key measure for organizations. Key referent for organizations. Key measure for individuals. Key referent for individuals. Liquidity measure, helpful for understanding if obligations can be paid when due. Current ratio, current assets divided by current liabilities. A ratio of less than 1.0 suggests the firm does not have enough cash to pay its bills. Cash in your checking account. Do you have enough cash to cover your monthly debts? Leverage measures, helpful for understanding if debt level is too high. The term leverage refers to the extent to which borrowed money is used. Debt-to-equity ratio. Competitors' debt-to-equity ratios. The use of debt varies across industries. Auto companies, for example, tend to have high debt-to-equity because they must build massive factories. Debt-to-income ratio, monthly debt payments divided by monthly income. If you have a debt-to-income ratio higher than 40%, you may be on the verge of becoming a credit risk. Profitability measures, helpful for understanding how much profit, if any, is really being made. Net income, income after taxes. Last year's net income. An increase shows the firm's profits are moving in the right direction. Net income, income after taxes. Are you making enough money to cover your yearly expenses and save for retirement? This story parallels the challenge involved in understanding the multidimensional nature of organization performance because different measures and reference may tell a different part of the overall story about the organization's performance. For example, the Fortune 500 list names the largest U.S. firms in terms of sales. These firms are generally not the strongest performers in terms of growth in stock price, however, in part because they are so big that making major improvements is difficult. During the late 1990s, a number of internet-centered businesses enjoyed exceptional growth in sales and stock price, but reported losses rather than profits. Many investors in these firms who simply fixated on a single performance measure, sales growth, absorbed heavy losses when the stock market's attention turned to profits and the stock prices of these firms plummeted. Figure 2.6, the story of the blind men, and the elephant provides a metaphor for understanding the complexities of measuring organizational performance. The number of performance measures and reference that are relevant for understanding an organization's performance can be overwhelming, however. For example, a study of what performance metrics were used within restaurant organizations' annual reports found that 788 different combinations of measures and reference were used within this one industry in a single year. Thus, executives need to choose a rich yet limited set of performance measures and reference to focus on. The Balanced Scorecard. To develop a more predictive set of organization performance measures, Professor Robert Kaplan and Professor David Norton of Harvard University developed a tool called the Balanced Scorecard. Using the scorecard helps managers resist the temptation to fixate on financial measures and instead monitor a diverse set of important measures. Figure 2.7, Beyond Profits, measuring performance using the Balanced Scorecard. Indeed, the idea behind the framework is to provide a balance between financial measures and other measures that are important for understanding organizational activities that lead to sustained, long-term performance. The Balanced Scorecard recommends that managers gain an overview of the organization's performance by tracking a small number of key measures that collectively reflect 4 dimensions: financial focus, customer focus, internal business process focus, and learning and growth focus. Figure 2.7, Beyond Profits, measuring performance using the Balanced Scorecard. Image description. Financial measures. Financial measures of performance relate to organizational effectiveness and profits. Examples include financial ratios such as return on assets, return on equity, and return on investment. Other common financial measures include profits and stock price. Such measures help answer the key question, how do we look to shareholders? Such measures have long been of interest to senior management and investors. Financial performance measures are commonly articulated and emphasized within an organization's annual report to shareholders. To provide context, such measures should be objective and be coupled with meaningful reference, such as the firm's past performance. For example, Starbucks' 2009 annual report highlights the firm's performance in terms of net revenue, operating income, and cash flow over a 5-year period. Customer measures. Customer measures of performance relate to customer attraction, satisfaction, and retention. These measures provide insight to the key question, how do customers see us? Examples might include the number of new customers and the percentage of repeat customers. Starbucks realizes the importance of repeat customers and has taken a number of steps to satisfy and to attract regular visitors to their stores. For example, Starbucks rewards regular customers with free drinks and offers all customers free Wi-Fi access. Starbucks also encourages repeat visits by providing cards with codes for free iTunes downloads. The featured songs change regularly, encouraging frequent repeat visits. Internal business process measures. Internal business process measures of performance relate to organizational efficiency. These measures help answer the key question, what must we excel at? Examples include the time it takes to manufacture the organization's good or deliver a service. The time it takes to create a new product and bring it to market is another example of this type of measure. Organizations such as Starbucks realize the importance of such efficiency measures for the long-term success of its organization, and Starbucks carefully examines its processes with the goal of decreasing order fulfillment time. In one recent example, Starbucks efficiency experts challenged their employees to assemble a Mr. Potato Head to understand how work could be done more quickly. The aim of this exercise was to help Starbucks employees in general match the speed of the firm's high performers, who boast an average time per order of 25 seconds. One key aspect for organizations producing physical goods, as compared to services, are supply chain management indicators. Both Walmart and GM are examples of the increased profits that can result from effective management of the supply chain through initiatives such as just-in-time supply chain management. Of course, to reduce supply inventory, data must be both timely and accurate, or else you run out of key parts and the production line stops. In the 1990s, pre-internet, Walmart acquired their own satellite system that allowed them to collect sales by item and ordered replacement to restock their shelves every 8 hours, while GM kept only enough tires for 4 hours of car assembly at any one time. Learning and growth measures. Learning and growth measures of performance relate to the future. Such measures provide insight to tell the organization, can we continue to improve and create value? Learning and growth measures focus on innovation and proceed with an understanding that strategies change over time. Consequently, developing new ways to add value will be needed as the organization continues to adapt to an evolving environment. An example of a learning and growth measure is the number of new skills learned by employees every year. One way Starbucks encourages its employees to learn skills that may benefit both the firm and individuals in the future is through its tuition reimbursement program. Employees who have worked with Starbucks for more than a year are eligible. Starbucks hopes that the knowledge acquired while earning a college degree might provide employees with the skills needed to develop innovations that will benefit the company in the future. Another benefit of this program is that it helps Starbucks reward and retain high-achieving employees. Measuring performance using the triple bottom line. Ralph Waldo Emerson once noted, "Doing well is the result of doing good." That's what capitalism is all about. While the Balanced Scorecard provides a popular framework to help executives understand an organization's performance, other frameworks highlight areas such as social responsibility. One such framework, the triple bottom line, emphasizes the 3 Ps of people, making sure that the actions of the organization are socially responsible, the planet. Making sure organizations act in a way that promotes environmental sustainability and traditional organization profits. This notion was introduced in the early 1980s, but did not attract much attention until the late 1990s. In the case of Starbucks, the firm has made clear the importance it attaches to the planet by creating an environmental mission statement. Starbucks is committed to a role of environmental leadership in all facets of our business, in addition to its overall mission. In terms of the people dimension of the triple bottom line, Starbucks strives to purchase coffee beans harvested by farmers who work under humane conditions and are paid reasonable wages. The firm works to be profitable as well, of course. Key takeaway. Organizational performance is a multidimensional concept, and wise managers rely on multiple measures of performance when gauging the success or failure of their organizations. The Balanced Scorecard provides a tool to help executives gain a general understanding of their organization's current level of achievement across a set of 4 important dimensions. The Triple Bottom Line provides another tool to help executives focus on performance targets beyond profits alone. This approach stresses the importance of social and environmental outcomes. Benefits and costs of CEO celebrity. 1. Fame is other people's perception of who you are, said Oprah Winfrey. In order to remain true to who you are, you have to be aware of it, but you can't buy into it. The word celebrity quickly brings to mind actors, sports stars, and musicians. Some CEOs, such as Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey, Martha Stewart, and Donald Trump, also achieve celebrity status. Celebrity CEOs are not a new phenomenon. In the early 20th century, industrial barons such as Henry Ford, John D. Rockefeller, and Cornelius Vanderbilt were household names. However, in the current era of mass and instant media, celebrity CEOs have become more prevalent and visible. Ryerson University and McGill University were named after benefactors Egerton Ryerson and James McGill, who established those schools which now serve as their legacies. Both benefits and costs are associated with CEO celebrity. CEO celebrity can serve as an intangible asset for the CEO's firm and may increase opportunities available to the firm. Hiring or developing a celebrity CEO may increase stock price, enhance a firm's image, and improve the morale of employees and other stakeholders. However, employing a celebrity CEO also entails risks for an organization. Increased attention to the firm via the celebrity CEO means any gaps between actual and expected firm performance are magnified. Further, if a celebrity CEO acts in an unethical, inappropriate, or illegal manner, chances are that the CEO's firm will receive much more media attention than will other firms with similar problems. There are also personal benefits and risks associated with celebrity for the CEO. Celebrity CEOs tend to receive higher compensation and job perks than their colleagues. Celebrity CEOs are likely to enjoy increased prestige power, which facilitates invitations to serve on the boards of directors of other firms and creates opportunities to network with other managerial elites. Celebrity also can provide CEOs with a benefit of the doubt, a fact that protects against quick sanctions for downturns in firm performance and stock price. However, celebrity also creates potential costs for individuals. Celebrity CEOs face larger and more lasting reputation erosion if their job performance and behavior is inconsistent with their celebrity image. Celebrity CEOs face increased personal media scrutiny, and their friends and family must often endure increased attention into their personal and public lives. Accordingly, wise CEOs will attempt to understand and manage their celebrity status. Types of CEOs. Icons are CEOs possessing both fame and strong reputations. The icon CEO combines style and substance in the execution of their job responsibilities. Mary Kay Ash, Richard Branson, Bill Gates, and Warren Buffett are good examples of icons. The late Mary Kay Ash founded Mary Kay Cosmetics Corporation. The firm's great success and Ash's unconventional motivational methods, such as rewarding sales representatives with pink Cadillacs, made her famous. Partly because she emphasized helping other women succeed and ethical business practices, Mary Kay Ash also had a very positive reputation. Similarly, Richard Branson has created an empire with more than 400 companies, including Virgin Atlantic Airways and Virgin Records. Branson's celebrity status led him to star in his own reality-based show. He has also appeared on television series such as Baywatch and Friends, in addition to several cameo appearances in major motion pictures. Bill Gates, founder and former CEO of Microsoft, also has fame and a largely positive reputation. Gates is a proverbial household name in the tradition of Ford, Rockefeller, and Vanderbilt. He also is routinely listed among Time magazine's 100 most influential people and has received rock star receptions in India and Vietnam in recent years. Figure 2.8. Former Microsoft CEO Bill Gates exemplifies a CEO who has reached icon status. Warren Buffett is perhaps the best-known executive in the United States. As CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, he has accumulated wealth estimated at $62 billion and was the richest person in the world as of March 2008. Buffett's business insights command a level of respect that is perhaps unrivaled. Many in the investment and policymaking communities pay careful attention to his investment choices and his commentary on economic conditions. Despite Buffett's immense wealth and success, his reputation centers on humility and generosity. Buffett avoids the glitz of Wall Street and has lived for 50 years in a house he bought in Omaha, Nebraska, for $31,000. Meanwhile, his 2006 donation of approximately $30 billion to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was the largest charitable gift in history. Galen Weston is perhaps the best-known executive in Canada. As executive chairman of George Weston Limited, a leading food processing and distribution company. Galen Weston and family, with an estimated net worth of $8.9 billion, are listed as the second wealthiest in Canada and 147th in the world by Forbes magazine, Forbes, 2014. Galen Weston, Jr., the current executive chairman of the Loblaw Companies Limited, has been featured in a series of television and radio ads for Loblaws, which focus on the company's recent push toward the use of environmentally friendly products and packaging. Celebrity net worth, 2104. Scoundrels. CEOs who display high levels of relative fame but low levels of reputation are in the group called scoundrels. These CEOs are well known but vilified. The late Leona Helmsley was a prototypical scoundrel. Leona Helmsley's life was a classic rags to riches story. Born to immigrant parents, Helmsley became a billionaire through her work as the head of an extensive hotel and real estate empire. While certainly famous, her reputation was anything but positive, as reflected by her nickname, the Queen of Mean. During Helmsley's trial for tax fraud, her housekeeper quoted her as proclaiming, "We don't pay taxes. Only the little people pay taxes." Following 21 months in jail, Helmsley was required to perform 750 hours of community service. 150 hours were added to this sentence after it was discovered that employees had performed some of her service hours. Helmsley's apparent arrogance, combined with her cruelty to employees and her reputation as the ultimate workplace bully, cemented her position as a scoundrel. The corporate governance scandals of the early 2000s revealed several CEOs as scoundrels. Perhaps the best known were Kenneth Lay and Dennis Kozlowski. Both men rose to prominence as their firm's success and stock prices soared, but were undone by dubious activities. Lay was once revered as the son of a poor minister who founded Enron and built it into a giant in the energy business. In 2001, however, he became the face of corporate abuses in the United States after Enron's collapse led to scenes, captured on television, of employees left jobless and with retirement accounts full of worthless Enron stock. Lay was convicted of fraud in 2006 but died before sentencing. Helmsley died in 2007 and turned her back on relatives to bequeath the bulk of her estate, $12 million, to her dog. James, 2011. Bre-X was a group of companies in Canada that came to fame in the 1990s. A major part of the group, Bre-X Minerals Limited, based in Calgary, was involved in a major gold mining scandal when it reported it was sitting on an enormous gold deposit at Buseng, Indonesia, on Borneo. Bre-X bought the Buseng site in March 1993 and in October 1995 announced significant amounts of gold had been discovered, sending its stock price soaring. Originally a penny stock, its stock price reached a peak at 286 Canadian dollars and 50 cents, split adjusted, in May 1996 on the Toronto Stock Exchange, TC, with a total capitalization of over 6 billion Canadian dollars. Bre-X Minerals collapsed in 1997 after the gold samples were found to be a fraud. Wikipedia, 2014. Hidden gems. Hidden gems are CEOs who lack fame but possess positive reputations. These CEOs toil in relative obscurity while leading their firms to success. Their skill as executives is known mainly by those in their own firm and by their competitors. In many cases, the firm has some renown due to its success, but the CEO stays unknown. For example, consider the case of Anne Mulcahy. Mulcahy, CEO of Xerox, started her career at Xerox as a copier salesperson. Despite building an excellent reputation by rescuing Xerox from near bankruptcy, Mulcahy eschews fame and publicity. While being known for successfully leading Xerox by example and being willing to fly anywhere to meet a customer, she avoids stock analysts and reporters. Silent killers. Silent killers are the fourth and final group of CEOs. These CEOs are overlooked and ignored sources of harm to their firms. While scoundrels are closely monitored and scrutinized by the media, it may be too late before the poor ethics or incompetence of the silent killers is detected. In this sense, silent killers are sometimes worse than scoundrels. One example of silent killers is illustrated by the Nortel scandal of the late 2000s. The global telecom giant Nortel Networks Corporation was once Canada's most valuable company with 90,000 employees and stock that was trading at its peak at more than $124.50 a share. The firm was worth nearly $300 billion at its height, and it accounted for as much as one-third of the value of the S&P/TSX Composite Index at its peak. Former Chief Executive Frank Dunn, former CFO Douglas Beatty, and former Controller Michael Goligly were accused of defrauding the company and its investors. The company eventually collapsed under the weight of the accounting scandal and the bursting of the technology bubble. In 2009, Nortel began bankruptcy proceedings. In the ensuing years, the company's assets have been sold off piecemeal, raising almost $8 billion to pay back creditors. The judge said the Crown did not meet the burden of proof required to find the three men guilty, and they were acquitted in 2013, CBC, 2013. Shareholders and Nortel pensioners lost billions in the process. Strategy at the movies. Iron Man. Has Tony Stark gone crazy? This was the question that many stakeholders of Stark Industries were asking themselves in the 2008 blockbuster Iron Man. Tony Stark, CEO of Stark Industries, stunned his shareholders, employees, and the world when he announced that he was changing Stark Industries' mission from being one of the world's leading weapons manufacturers to being a socially responsible, clean energy producer. Following his announcement, Stark faced fierce opposition from his board of directors, employees, the media, and clients such as the U.S. military. The changes at Stark Industries attracted tremendous attention in part because of the glamorous Stark status as a celebrity CEO. Initially, Stark is seen by the public as a scoundrel that pays little attention to the social impact his company makes. After shifting the direction of Stark Industries, however, Stark is viewed as an icon that is just as attentive to the social performance of the company as he is to its financial performance. Iron Man illustrates that while changing elements such as firm mission and CEO status is difficult, it is not impossible. Celebrity rehabilitation. For celebrity CEOs, anything they say or do can and often will show up on the front page of a national daily newspaper or nightly news. Thus, they need to be much more conscious about the implications of everything that they say or do in all situations. Achieving the level of success that brings about celebrity status is seldom a completely smooth process. Even well-regarded celebrity CEOs seldom have totally untarnished reputations. Bill Gates has been on U.S. national TV, speaking out and defending himself against some of Steve Jobs' most biting digs, including that Gates wasn't creative or innovative. Among the quotes in the biography Steve Jobs, author Walter Isaacson quotes Jobs saying of Gates, "Bill is basically unimaginative and has never invented anything, which is why I think he's more comfortable now in philanthropy than technology. He just shamelessly ripped off other people's ideas." Gates tactfully rebutted the scathing comments, Kearns, 2011. Similarly, the public and personal life of Rob Ford, mayor of Toronto, has been splashed across national and international media. What should a CEO do when their reputation takes a hit? As the old saying goes, honesty is the best policy. Stephen Harper stood in the House of Commons in 2008 to say sorry to former students of native residential schools in the first formal apology from a Canadian Prime Minister over the federally financed program. "Mr. Speaker, I stand before you today to offer an apology to former students of Indian residential schools," Harper said in Ottawa, surrounded by a small group of Aboriginal leaders and former students, some of whom wept as he spoke. The treatment of children in Indian residential schools is a sad chapter in our history. Today, we recognize that this policy of assimilation was wrong, has caused great harm, and has no place in our country, he said to Applause. The government now recognizes that the consequences of the Indian residential schools policy were profoundly negative and that this policy has had a lasting and damaging impact on Aboriginal culture, heritage, and language, Harper said. The government formalized a $1.9 billion compensation plan for victims. The government has also established a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to examine the legacy of the residential schools. Former Liberal Prime Minister Jean Chrétien offered a statement of reconciliation on behalf of the government in 1998, although it was largely rejected by members of the Aboriginal community as lip service, CBC, 2008. Key takeaway. The media exposure common to modern CEOs provides the opportunity for such top executives to reach celebrity status. While this status can provide positive benefits to their firm such as increased performance, CEOs should be aware of and manage the potential for increased scrutiny associated with this status. Conclusion. This chapter explains several challenges that executives face in attempting to lead their organizations strategically. Executives must ensure that their organizations have visions, missions, and goals in place that help move these organizations forward. Measures and reference for assessing performance must be thoughtfully chosen. Some executives become celebrities, thereby creating certain advantages and disadvantages for themselves and for their firms. Finally, executives must monitor the degree of entrepreneurial orientation present within their organizations and make adjustments when necessary. When executives succeed at leading strategically, an organization has an excellent chance of success. Conclusion. This chapter explains several challenges that executives face in attempting to lead their organizations strategically. Executives must ensure that their organizations have visions, missions, and goals in place that help move these organizations forward. Measures and reference for assessing performance must be thoughtfully chosen. Some executives become celebrities, thereby creating certain advantages and disadvantages for themselves and for their firms. Finally, executives must monitor the degree of entrepreneurial orientation present within their organizations and make adjustments when necessary. When executives succeed at leading strategically, an organization has an excellent chance of success. What are some challenges and best practices for managing and working with multicultural teams? As globalization has increased over the last decades, workplaces have felt the impact of working within multicultural teams. The earlier section on team diversity outlined some of the highlights and benefits of working on diverse teams, and a multicultural group certainly qualifies as diverse. However, there are some key practices that are recommended to those who are leading multicultural teams so that they can parlay the diversity into an advantage and not be derailed by it. People may assume that communication is the key factor that can derail multicultural teams, as participants may have different languages and communication styles. In the Harvard Business Review article, Managing Multicultural Teams, the authors point out 4 key cultural differences that can cause destructive conflicts in a team. 12. The first difference is direct versus indirect communication. Some cultures are very direct and explicit in their communication, while others are more indirect and ask questions rather than pointing out problems. This difference can cause conflict because, at the extreme, the direct style may be considered offensive by some, while the indirect style may be perceived as unproductive and passive-aggressive in team interactions. The second difference that multicultural teams may face is trouble with accents and fluency. When team members don't speak the same language, there may be one language that dominates the group interaction, and those who don't speak it may feel left out. The speakers of the primary language may feel that those members don't contribute as much or are less competent. The next challenge is when there are differing attitudes toward hierarchy. Some cultures are very respectful of the hierarchy and will treat team members based on that hierarchy. Other cultures are more egalitarian and don't observe hierarchical differences to the same degree. This may lead to clashes if some people feel that they are being disrespected and not treated according to their status. The final difference that may challenge multicultural teams is conflicting decision-making norms. Different cultures make decisions differently, and some will apply a great deal of analysis and preparation beforehand. Those cultures that make decisions more quickly and need just enough information to make a decision may be frustrated with the slow response and relatively longer thought process. These cultural differences are good examples of how everyday team activities, decision-making, communication, interaction among team members may become points of contention for a multicultural team if there isn't adequate understanding of everyone's culture. The authors propose that there are several potential interventions to try if these conflicts arise. One simple intervention is adaptation, which is working with or around differences. This is best used when team members are willing to acknowledge the cultural differences and learn how to work with them. The next intervention technique is structural intervention, or reorganizing to reduce friction on the team. This technique is best used if there are unproductive subgroups or cliques within the team that need to be moved around. Managerial intervention is the technique of making decisions by management and without team involvement. This technique is one that should be used sparingly, as it essentially shows that the team needs guidance and can't move forward without management getting involved. Finally, exit is an intervention of last resort and is the voluntary or involuntary removal of a team member. If the differences and challenges have proven to be so great that an individual on the team can no longer work with the team productively, then it may be necessary to remove the team member in question. There are some people who seem to be innately aware of and able to work with cultural differences on teams and in their organizations. These individuals might be said to have cultural intelligence. Cultural intelligence is a competency and a skill that enables individuals to function effectively in cross-cultural environments. It develops as people become more aware of the influence of culture and more capable of adapting their behavior to the norms of other cultures. In the IEC Insight article entitled Cultural Competence, Why It Matters and How You Can Acquire It, Li and Liao, 2015, the authors assert that multicultural leaders may relate better to team members from different cultures and resolve conflicts more easily. 13. Their multiple talents can also be put to good use in international negotiations. Multicultural leaders don't have a lot of baggage from any one culture and so are sometimes perceived as being culturally neutral. They are very good at handling diversity, which gives them a great advantage in their relationships with teammates. In order to help employees become better team members in a world that is increasingly multicultural, there are a few best practices that the authors recommend for honing cross-cultural skills. The first is to broaden your mind, expand your own cultural channels, travel, movies, books, and surround yourself with people from other cultures. This helps to raise your own awareness of the cultural differences and norms that you may encounter. Another best practice is to develop your cross-cultural skills through practice and experiential learning. You may have the opportunity to work or travel abroad, but if you don't, then getting to know some of your company's cross-cultural colleagues or foreign visitors will help you to practice your skills. Serving on a cross-cultural project team and taking the time to get to know and bond with your global colleagues is an excellent way to develop skills. In my own past life, I led a global human resources organization, and my team included employees from China, India, Brazil, Hungary, the Netherlands, and the United States. We would have annual meetings as a global HR team, and it was so rewarding to share and learn about each other's cultures. We would initiate the week with a gift exchange in a show and tell format from our various countries so that everyone would learn a little bit more about the cultures in which our fellow colleagues were working. This type of interaction within a global team is a great way to facilitate cross-cultural understanding and communication and to sharpen everyone's cultural intelligence. Managing change. Understanding our global colleagues. If you're a part of a global team, there are so many challenges that confront you even before you talk about people dynamics and cultural differences. You first may have to juggle time zone differences to find an adequate meeting time that suits all team members. I used to have a team call with my Chinese colleagues at 8 p.m. my time, so that I could catch them at 8 a.m. in China the next day. Language challenges can also pose a problem. In many countries, people are beginning to learn English as one of the main business languages. However, as I have experienced, people don't always speak their language the same way that you might learn their language in a book. There are colloquialisms, terms, and abbreviations of words that you can't learn in a classroom. You need to experience how people speak in their native countries. You also need to be open-minded and look at situations from the perspective of your colleagues' cultures, just as you hope they will be open-minded about yours. This is referred to as cultural intelligence. Whenever I would travel globally to visit my colleagues in other countries, I would see foods, traditions, situations, and behaviors that were very foreign to me. Although my first response to experiencing these might be to think, wow, that's strange, I would try to think about what some of my global colleagues find foreign when they come to visit me in the United States. For example, my travel to China would put me in contact with chicken feet, a very popular food in China and one that I dislike immensely. Whenever I was offered chicken feet, I would turn them down in the most polite way possible and would take another food that was offered instead. I started to wonder about what my Chinese colleagues thought about the food when they'd come to visit me in the United States. Every year, I would host a global HR meeting in the United States, and a big part of that meeting was the camaraderie and the sharing of various meals together. When I asked my Chinese colleagues what foods they thought were unpleasant, they mentioned cheese and meat. I was surprised about the meat, and when I asked, they said that it wasn't the meat itself necessarily, but it was the giant portions of meat that Americans will eat that, to them, is pretty unappetizing. Again, it is so important to check yourself and your own culture every so often and to think about those elements that we take for granted, e.g., gigantic meat portions, and try to look at them from the eyes of another culture. It really makes us smarter and better partners to our global colleagues around the world. In the HBR article, Getting Cross-Cultural Teamwork Right, the author states that 3 key factors, mutual learning, mutual understanding, and mutual teaching, build trust with cross-cultural colleagues as you try to bridge cultural gaps. With mutual learning, global colleagues learn from each other and absorb the new culture and behaviors through listening and observation. In mutual understanding, you try to understand the logic and cultural behaviors of the new culture to understand why people are doing what they do. This, of course, requires suspending judgment and trying to understand and embrace the differences. Finally, mutual teaching involves instructing and facilitating. This means trying to bridge the gap between the two cultures and helping yourself and others see where different cultures are coming from in order to resolve misunderstandings. Understanding and finding common ground with your global colleagues isn't easy, and it takes patience and continuous improvement. In the end, however, I think that you will find it one of the most rewarding and enlightening things you can do. The more we work to close the multicultural gap and make it a multicultural advantage, the better off we will be as professionals and as people. Discussion questions. What are some multicultural experiences that you've had in which you feel that there was a very wide gap between you and an individual from another culture? How did you handle it? Has economic globalization helped people to bridge these cultural gaps? Why or why not? Once you have a sense of the different cultures and have started to work on developing your cross-cultural skills, another good practice is to boost your cultural metacognition and monitor your own behavior in multicultural situations. When you are in a situation in which you are interacting with multicultural individuals, you should test yourself and be aware of how you act and feel. Observe both your positive and negative interactions with people and learn from them. Developing cognitive complexity is the final best practice for boosting multicultural skills. This is the most advanced, and it requires being able to view situations from more than one cultural framework. In order to see things from another perspective, you need to have a strong sense of emotional intelligence, empathy, and sympathy, and be willing to engage in honest communications. In the Harvard Business Review article, Cultural Intelligence, the authors describe 3 sources of cultural intelligence that teams should consider if they are serious about becoming more adept in their cross-cultural skills and understanding. These sources, very simply, are head, body, and heart. One first learns about the beliefs, customs, and taboos of foreign cultures by the head. Training programs are based on providing this type of overview information, which is helpful, but obviously isn't experiential. This is the cognitive component of cultural intelligence. The second source, the body, involves more commitment and experimentation with the new culture. It is this physical component, demeanor, eye contact, posture, accent, that shows a deeper level of understanding of the new culture and its physical manifestations. The final source, the heart, deals with the person's own confidence in their ability to adapt to and deal well with cultures outside of their own. Heart really speaks to one's own level of emotional commitment and motivation to understand the new culture. The authors have created a quick assessment to diagnose cultural intelligence based on these cognitive, physical, and emotional/motivational measures, i.e., head, body, heart. Please refer to Table 15.1 for a short diagnostic that allows you to assess your cultural intelligence. Assessing your cultural intelligence. Give your responses using a 1 to 5 scale, where 1 means that you strongly disagree and 5 means that you strongly agree with the statement. Before I interact with people from a new culture, I wonder to myself what I hope to achieve. If I encounter something unexpected while working in a new culture, I use that experience to build new ways to approach other cultures in the future. I plan on how I am going to relate to people from a different culture before I meet with them. When I come into a new cultural situation, I can immediately sense whether things are going well or if things are going wrong. Add your total from the 4 questions above. Divide the total by 4. This is your cognitive cultural quotient. It is easy for me to change my body language, posture, or facial expression to suit people from a different culture. I can alter my expressions when a cultural encounter requires it. I can modify my speech style by changing my accent or pitch of voice to suit people from different cultures. I can easily change the way I act when a cross-cultural encounter seems to require it. Add your total from the 4 questions above. Divide the total by 4. This is your cognitive physical quotient. I have confidence in my ability to deal well with people from different cultures than mine. I am certain that I can befriend people of different cultural backgrounds than mine. I can adapt to the lifestyle of a different culture with relative ease. I am confident in my ability to deal with an unfamiliar cultural situation or encounter. Add your total from the 4 questions above. Divide the total by 4. This is your emotional/motivational cognitive quotient. Generally, scoring below 3 in any one of the 3 measures signals an area requiring improvement. Averaging over 4 displays strength in cultural intelligence. 6.10. The female executive's perspective on career planning and advancement in organizations. Abstract. Gender bias continues to play a role in the gender discrepancy at executive levels in organizations across the United States, although women hold 51% of all middle management positions. Female middle managers may be overlooked for advancement to executive positions because of a lack of synergy between individual career planning and organizational development and advancement practices. This may have significant implications for organizations as they struggle to recruit and hire qualified senior leadership to close the widening leadership gap created as baby boomers leave the workforce in record numbers over the next decade. One way to retain talented, knowledgeable, female middle managers is to incorporate career planning and advancement programs, which increase visibility for both the individual and organizational leaders into potential advancement opportunities. This descriptive phenomenological study was designed to investigate and describe the lived experiences of female executives with career planning and advancement in organizations. Data collected from 16 female executives employed in organizations in Nashville, Tennessee, revealed that although individuals must make a commitment to career planning and take responsibility for executing the plan, successful career planning and advancement are dependent on others beyond the individual seeking advancement. The findings of this study are important for women who desire advancement to executive levels and to organizational leaders who want to hire and promote the right person for the job regardless of gender. Introduction. As of March 2011, 51.5% of managers in the United States were women, but only 14.4% of executive officers and a mere 5.2% of the CEOs were female. Catalyst. 2011. Researchers strive to identify the barriers women face in the pursuit of advancement in organizations in the United States and explain how women of high professional achievement have overcome barriers to career advancement, including gender bias, conflicting behavioral expectations, the double bind, challenges to networking, and difficulties initiating mentor relationships. Research found that engaging in career planning can help women proactively manage their careers, navigate obstacles to advancement, and overcome gender bias and stereotypes to obtain executive-level leadership positions in the United States organizations. Sabatini, 2008, Warren, 2009. Providing organizational support for career planning and advancement can help organizational leaders retain talented female middle managers and close the leadership gap, which will only widen further as millions of baby boomers leave the workforce in the next 10 years. Green, 2007. Levanon and Chung, 2011. Rogers et al., 2011. For the purpose of this study, a distinction was made between career development, career planning, and career planning strategies. Career development was defined as the application of programs, training, and development opportunities provided by the employer to assist employees with professional development and advancement. Lally, 2009. Career paths, career maps, education, training, and workshops are all common components of career development programs and assist employees with the implementation of a career plan. Van de Ven, 2007. Career planning was defined as the action taken to access individual values, desires, goals, interests, and career aspirations. Career planning also encompasses evaluating opportunities, setting career goals, engaging in purposeful networking, hiring a career coach, obtaining career counseling, identifying and taking advantage of educational and developmental opportunities, and actively seeking the advice and guidance of trusted peers, managers, and subject matter experts. Dagley and Salter, 2004. McGrath, Zell, and Vance, 2013. Women in organizations often face obstacles in obtaining mentors, especially female mentors who may have better insights into the challenges women face in achieving advancement in organizations. Enslin, 2007. Evans, 2009. A study conducted by Raggans and Cotton, 1991, found that women had restricted access to mentors and reported a lack of availability and willingness of male leaders to engage in a mentoring relationship with females. A second study found that women who successfully gained access to male mentors were significantly less likely to engage in and benefit from networking and bonding opportunities available outside work hours. Raggans and Cotton, 1999. Herminia, 1992, and Sabatini, 2008, pointed out that a lack of access to social bonding presented an obstacle to advancement for women in organizations and has consequences for career advancement manifest in the underrepresentation of women in executive positions. Career planning was identified as one of the unwritten rules to advancement for women in organizations, and female executives who participated in past research studies exploring the hurdles to advancement for women wished they had discovered and applied career planning earlier in their careers. Evans, 2009, Sabatini, 2008, Sabatini and Dinalfo, 2010. Career planning can help women overcome obstacles to advancement in organizations by helping the individual gain the self-awareness to make the appropriate career choices and helping individuals identify and leverage development tools appropriate to achieving long-term personal and professional growth. Thurgate and Jackson, 2011. Insights gained from engaging in career planning with employees may also help organizations develop and implement programs, policies, and procedures that more adequately promote gender equality in recruiting, hiring, promotion, and succession planning practices. Levanon and Chung, 2011. Guthridge, Calm, and Lawson, 2008. Rogers et al., 2011. Creating a partnership between motivated female employees and organizational leaders by implementing a comprehensive career planning element in the talent management system may be effective in mitigating the loss of female talent in organizations. Creating a partnership may also help organizational leaders close the leadership gap and mitigate the loss of experienced workers as older workers begin to retire and leave the workforce in larger numbers. Green, 2007. Levanon and Chung, 2011. Rogers et al., 2011. Organizations that create customized career paths and development opportunities improve both employee loyalty and customer loyalty. Benko and Weisberg, 2007. The transparency and detail available through customized career planning allow individuals and organizations to leverage career development tools to maximize the potential of the individual and to meet both individual and organizational growth objectives. Adamation and Zabrikian, 2010. Increasing employee retention rates and promoting from within saves organizations millions of dollars in costs associated with high employee turnover. Benko and Weisberg, 2007. Research question. This study was organized around one central question and 6 sub-questions. The central research question was as follows. What are female executives' perceptions of experiences with career planning and advancement in organizations? Theoretical framework. The theoretical framework for this study provides a foundation for understanding the obstacles to the advancement of women in organizations in the United States and includes the theory of cascading gender bias, Warren, 2009, the double-bind dilemma, Catalyst, 2007, and the unwritten rules of advancement, Sabatini, 2008. Each of these theories describes implications of gender bias for perceptions of women as leaders and the influence of gender stereotypes on the advancement of women in organizations. These studies address the hurdles women face as they pursue advancement in organizations and provided the theoretical underpinning for this study. Cascading gender bias. The theory of cascading gender bias identified potential for leadership bias to influence organizational human resource management system. Warren, 2009, described the double-bind dilemma and the unwritten rules to advancement as side effects of gender bias, which can prevent women from advancing to the executive suite. Warren identified three major contributors to gender bias in talent management systems: senior leadership effect, institutionalizing bias, and compounding bias. Senior leadership effect describes two phenomena that contribute to cascading bias. First, because both male and female managers apply a think leader, think male perspective to performance evaluation, women are disadvantaged when being considered for leadership positions, regardless of the gender of the hiring manager or influential organizational executive. Jackson et al., 2007, Warren, 2009. Second, people generally prefer to work with and associate with others who share their beliefs, values, and interest. Generally, people feel most comfortable with others most similar to themselves. Consciously or subconsciously, organizational leaders apply gender stereotypes to establish preferences among potential candidates for executive openings and influence decisions about who is hired or promoted to top positions. Warren, 2009. Because the majority of organizational executives are male, it stands to reason that the majority of individuals promoted to executive positions will also be male. Rosenfeld, 2009. Warren, 2009. Senior leadership effect influences who gets assigned to high-visibility projects, takes part in networking opportunities, and receives mentoring. Sabatini, 2008. Sabatini and Dinolfo, 2010. Warren, 2009. Stereotypes are built into talent management procedures, programs, and tools and contribute to institutionalizing bias. Warren, 2009. Career path planning, succession planning, and mentoring programs can magnify the influence of leadership bias on the hiring, development, and promotion processes built into talent management systems. Advancement and succession planning criteria are often established and dictated with top-down influence in organizations. Little consideration is given to whether criteria identified include characteristics or traits that incorporate or perpetuate gender bias. Warren, 2009, described compounding biases as gaps between the design and execution of talent management programs compound the disadvantages faced by women, especially those seeking professional development and advancement. Page 6. Double-bind. The double-bind dilemma for women in leadership established that women in organizations struggled to overcome contradictory demands for performance, behavior, and leadership. Catalyst, 2007, described a double-bind as a set of conflicting demands that require women demonstrate contradictory behaviors that set them up for harsh judgment no matter which behavior is adopted and forces women to choose between equally unsatisfactory alternatives. Catalyst, 2007. The double-bind manifests itself in three predicaments: extreme perception, the high competence threshold, and competent but disliked, and is manifest in masculine leadership theory and stereotypes. Catalyst, 2007. Extreme perceptions are a manifestation of gender stereotypes, which create the tendency for women to be described as nurturing and compassionate. Such stereotypes create a predicament in which, when female leaders behave as expected, nurturing and compassionate, they are labeled too soft. Alternatively, if a female leader is assertive and firm, unnurturing and uncompassionate, that woman will be labeled too tough. High competency threshold describes a predicament in which women must deliver to higher standards than male counterparts, often for smaller rewards. As a result, women face the high competency threshold when they are required to prove leadership ability repeatedly, or when they must perform more consistently and at a higher level than male counterparts only to receive the same or lower compensation, recognition, or opportunities. The predicament described as competent but disliked describes the phenomenon in which female managers and executives are challenged with balancing passiveness with assertiveness to satisfy the expectations of colleagues and managers. Regardless of experience, performance results, ability, influence, or use of power, female managers must endure constant scrutiny and judgment from others who inevitably label them as too soft or too hard. Competent but disliked is a predicament that describes the dilemma of being seen either as someone who takes charge or someone who takes care. The result is that female leaders are perceived as likable or competent, but rarely both. Catalyst, 2007, page 8. Unwritten rules of advancement. The theory of unwritten rules for advancement identified specific, undocumented behaviors that influence upward mobility in organizations. Sabatini, 2008, described networking, gaining visibility, leveraging organizational politics, developing strong communication skills, demonstrating strong performance, obtaining mentoring, working long hours, and having a career plan as significant factors in the unwritten rules for advancement. Failures to identify, acknowledge, and adhere to the unwritten rules for advancement could delay or even derail one's career. The unwritten rules to advancement were identified as a hurdle for women seeking advancement to executive levels in organizations because female workers often learn about the unwritten rules through observation and trial and error, rather than from relationships built through mentoring or networking, and not knowing may delay or derail advancement. Sabatini, 2008. Methods, techniques, or modes of inquiry. A descriptive phenomenological design was appropriate for this research study because the purpose of this research was to explore and describe female executives' experiences and perceptions pertinent to career planning and advancement in organizations. 10 in-depth interviews and 2 focus groups were used to thoroughly investigate and describe experiences and perceptions. Focus group interviews involving 3 female executives each were leveraged to triangulate the data collected in the in-depth interviews and confirm the themes that emerged in the data. All study participants were female executives employed in organizations in Nashville, Tennessee, during the 2 years leading up to the study. Data sources, evidence, objectives, or materials. This study used purposeful and snowball sampling of female executives in the greater Nashville, Tennessee area. Participants were recruited through email, in person, and over the phone and were invited to participate in in-depth interviews or focus groups to share personal, lived experiences with career planning and advancement in organizations. 62 women were invited to participate in the study. 16 agreed to participate, 10 participated in in-depth interviews, and 6 participated in focus group interviews. The 10 in-depth interviews and 2 focus groups that resulted in the collection of data for the study were held in classrooms on University of Phoenix campuses in Nashville, Tennessee, and Murfreesboro, Tennessee. In-depth interviews and focus groups were conducted to the point of data saturation. Standardized interview protocols were developed and peer-reviewed prior to the study. The protocols were used in all in-depth interviews and focus group interviews to ensure that study participants in each session were provided with an opportunity to respond to an identical set of questions. Demographic and work history questionnaires were used to collect demographic data such as age bracket, marital status, education level, and work history detail including industry, size of current organization, and years of experience in executive positions. The researcher conducted the interviews following the in-depth interview and focus group protocol. The in-depth interview protocol was designed to mitigate the potential for subjectivity and bias in individual interview settings and guided each in-depth interview. In-depth interview questions were developed to provide data that may be helpful to answering the research questions identified for this study. Questions were developed to ensure open-ended answers describing participants' perceptions and experiences with the phenomenon under study. Questions were developed in alignment with the research questions and to guide the interview process. In-depth interview questions were designed to gather data-rich descriptions of female executives' lived experiences, beliefs, and perceptions relevant to career planning and advancement in organizations. Validation of study protocol and data collection tools is recommended to ensure adequate design for eliciting data-rich responses from the study subjects. Pilot interviews and focus groups are effective tools for validating study protocol. Leedy and Ormrod, 2010, Saukind, 2003. Expert review of study protocol and demographics and work history profile questionnaires ensured credibility and consistency in data collection. The expert was a senior director of human resources for a medium-sized firm and possessed extensive experience with qualitative research, focus groups, and the development and validation of focus group protocol. To evaluate the clarity of in-depth interview questions and the effectiveness of the interview protocol, a pilot study took place prior to the actual study. A pilot study is an effective way of validating study protocol. Leedy and Ormrod, 2010, Saukind, 2003. No questions were changed prior to conducting the actual in-depth interviews for this study. The pilot in-depth interview participant did not participate in the actual study. The pilot study revealed that the in-depth interview questions were clear and concise and elicited open-ended answers sufficient to collect data capable of answering the research questions posed for the study. No changes were made to the in-depth interview protocol based on the results of the pilot in-depth interview. The focus group protocol listed the predetermined questions that were applied in each focus group interview. Questions were developed before the focus group pilot interview based on themes identified in the analysis of data collected from in-depth interviews. The themes identified dictated the selection of the topics discussed and the format of focus group interview questions. Focus group questions were developed to provide data that may be helpful to answering the research questions identified for the study and relevant to verifying themes identified in analysis of in-depth interview data. Questions were developed to guide the focus group interviews, ensure open-ended answers in alignment with the research questions, and facilitate candid discussion among focus group participants. One pilot focus group was conducted to evaluate the appropriateness of the focus group and to ensure the clarity of interview questions. Based on feedback from the pilot focus group members, one question was modified. Participants from the pilot study did not participate in the actual study. The demographics and work history profile were designed to gather demographic and work history details relevant to describing the sample relevant to this study. Work history and demographic data made it possible to identify and describe characteristics of the participants, the organizations, and the industries represented by the study sample. All study participants were asked to sign a signed consent form, were advised of their right to withdraw from the study at any time without any repercussions, were assured of confidentiality, and were assigned pseudonyms to ensure protection of privacy. The in-depth interview protocol, focus group protocol, and demographics and work history profile were reviewed by the International Review Board, IRB, to ensure adequate consideration for participant privacy, anonymity, and confidentiality. Results and point of view. A key finding of the study was that gender bias was the prevalent challenge experienced by women when applying career planning and advancement in organizations. Barriers to advancement for women in organizations were identified by Catalyst, 2007, Sabatini, 2008, and Warren, 2009, as the double-bind, the unwritten rules to advancement, and cascading gender bias. These three barriers were also identified as obstacles women face as they pursue advancement to executive levels in organizations. Although the unwritten rules to advancement apply to all employees, networking and access to mentors were two of the unwritten rules identified as unwritten rules that can represent seemingly insurmountable barriers for women in male-dominated environments. Herminia, 1992, Raggins and Cotton, 1991. 1999, Sabatini, 2008. Because women perceive a significant disadvantage in overcoming unwritten rules to networking, especially outside working hours, and gaining access to mentors. Raggans and Cotton, 1999. The unwritten rules to advancement were identified as gender-specific challenges for the purpose of this study. Experiences with the double-bind. Female executives who participated in the study shared perceptions and experiences with the double-bind, which was described by Catalyst, 2007, as a set of conflicting demands that earns women a label of either too nice or too brash, requires women to work harder than male counterparts for the same or less reward and recognition, and creates a need for women to prove themselves capable and worthy of each opportunity, often doing the job long before receiving the formal promotion, whereas male counterparts are given opportunities and promoted based on potential rather than proven performance. Cheryl explained her perceptions of the double-bind as a hurdle for women pursuing career planning and advancement in organizations when she stated, "A female needs to be worried, much more, about the respect level around her than the like level." That's something a female needs to come to terms with. I think sometimes we are wired a little different, but when you get to that place and accept that, you become a stronger leader. Another participant shared concerns about gender bias in the workplace. "I'm in a very male-dominated environment." Very male-dominated. "Very few women, organization name omitted, in my department and at my level and above. So, again, you've got to make sure you can hang in the meeting." She went on to say, "I feel like women almost have to try a little harder because there's an expectation that they're not going to be as business-minded, if you will, as men. So it's a little bit harder to work." One focus group participant commented on the need for women to vocalize their advancement desires because many managers assume women are not as career-driven as men. It does seem to be with men. It's almost just assumed. Well, of course they want to advance. With women, I don't know. And so, I think it's really, really important for women to make it clear, just to have an idea what else they want to do and try to be working and growing themselves to get there all the time. A fellow focus group participant spoke up, vocalizing concerns about the double standard often faced by women who advocate for themselves. Yes, she agreed, and not in a bitchy way, because when we speak up we're bitches, but when men speak up they're just being assertive. Pat described how gender bias could work against both male and female employees in low and mid-level environments dominated by either gender. Pat pointed out that low-level males trying to build careers in female-dominated industries, such as healthcare, may face more gender bias than women in the same roles, but observed that women may still be challenged by gender bias in pursuit of advancement to executive levels even in traditionally feminine industries. She stated, "Well, I think not only for women, but since we're talking about women, it's extremely important for women to have the degrees, to have the certifications, and to have the experience that they need. And sometimes I find that there is sort of a bias. In nursing the bias is more toward men coming into those positions versus females, because it's generally a female career. That's really the majority of people in those positions. In other positions, though, I think, depending on what it is, sometimes females are at a disadvantage because they are female." In summary, data collected and analyzed for this study revealed evidence of female executives' experiences with the double bind and supported the evidence of gender bias present in the 3 predicaments of the double bind as presented by Catalyst, 2007. Experiences with the unwritten rules to advancement. Female executives who participated in the study emphasized the importance of individual commitment to career planning and the responsibility for women to take ownership for pursuing career goals. Diane, a CEO with 20 years executive-level experience in organizations, emphasized the necessity for personal ownership in career planning and advancement, and the benefit of self-awareness gained through career planning. I think if we're aware of ourselves and of the opportunities, I really think there's power in that. And it's up to us to take advantage of that knowledge. Another participant, Brenda, advised junior women to do it. Number 1, you just gotta do it. And it's got to be you. Another participant explained how awareness of self and surroundings helped her manage her career through a volatile and uncertain time. Changes were happening. The changes that were happening were out of my control, so how could I be more in control of what I could control? And that's only just me. And how could I make my skills better or more marketable so if I did get cut, that my next opportunity, that I'd be a better prepared candidate. Another participant said that women were responsible for taking action to manage the trajectory of their own career whenever possible. You have to innovate, she said. She went on to explain how inequity in her work environment and a perceived need for change motivated her to develop and champion for the creation of a new position that resulted in her promotion to executive level. When I was a director of sales, I had 3 counterparts. 4 of us were covering the whole country, and I was so much more effective and better at my position than the other 3. Yet, I found out they were being paid more than me. They were 3 men, and I was the only female. That crawled all over me. So that's when I created the executive director level, sold it to senior management, and then I was promoted to executive director. Although every woman may not be in a position to create her own executive-level position, a career plan is powerless without action. Erica precisely summed this up when she declared, "I think that what a woman actually does plays a larger role than the actual career planning." Female executives who participated in the study described networking and building relationships with peers, mentors, and advocates as important factors in the lived experiences with career planning and advancement in organizations. One stated, "Women need to have strong supporters and strong sponsors within their organizations to help them move up. And we, as women, have a duty and an obligation." We just had a legal education thing on this the other day, lifting as we climb. We need to remember that there are people above us, women above us, who lifted us, and we need to lift the people behind us. And I believe career planning is such a big part of that. We need to talk to the younger women that we see in our organizations about thinking about career planning, about being deliberate in the choices that you make. Another said, "I heard somebody put it in terms of having a personal advisory board. Those people in your life that you can go and talk to and say, 'I need to talk to you about my career,' or 'I need to talk to you about finances,' or 'I need to see how you handled this situation.' And having those people that you trust to keep your confidences and you also trust to be brutally honest." In summary, in-depth interview and focus group participants for the study described experiences with the unwritten rules to advancement, specifically those rules related to career planning and to finding mentors and advocates who provide support and act as champions. Experiences with cascading gender bias. The basic principle behind cascading gender bias is that senior leaders, the majority of whom are male, consciously or subconsciously apply masculine assumptions to evaluate leadership potential and capabilities for the purposes of hiring. Promoting and Succession Planning, Warren, 2009. Female executives who participated in the study described experiences and observations related to cascading gender bias. Cascading gender bias was evident in one participant's reference to the Old Boys Club. "I think women work harder than men," the female executive stated. "There are the Old Boys Clubs, and they are there, and they are prevalent." The participant paused a moment and then went on to say, "I don't think they are wrong. I'm not calloused by it. It's just, where do I fit in?" When asked to describe the nature of the relationship between career planning and the advancement of women in organizations, another in-depth interview participant stated, "It really depends on leadership, in my opinion. It is a top-down perspective. If you work in an organization where women are seen as valuable in leadership roles, then I think those things trickle down. The female executive went on to say, in different years, in the company that I'm at, there have been 10 women in top leadership positions. In other years, there have been 2. It really just depends on who was president and CEO at the time. And yet another female executive described cascading gender bias as a hurdle to career planning and advancement in organizations when she said, "I have faced hurdles. I have worked in environments where it was very difficult for women to advance, largely because the leadership roles were filled with men who were looking to promote other men and not females. I have left those environments in order to continue to move up, realizing there were no opportunities." In summary, female executives who participated in this study shared observations and experiences in support of Warren's 2009 assertions that cascading gender bias influences and often dictates who gets recruited, hired, and promoted in an organization. Summary, results, and point of view. Gender bias was the prevalent challenge to career planning and advancement in organizations as described by female executives who participated in this study. Evidence of the double bind, the unwritten rules to advancement, and cascading gender bias was evident in the data collected in 10 in-depth interviews and 2 focus group interviews involving 3 female executives each. Participants described how career planning and engaging the support of mentors and advocates played a significant role in their advancement to executive-level leadership, which supports past research indicating that career planning may help women overcome obstacles to advancement in organizations. Sabatini, 2008. Sabatini and Dinolfo, 2010. Warren, 2009. Recommendations. The findings of this study may help organizational leaders develop appropriate models and programs to address career planning and advancement and increase the potential for hiring and promoting the best person for the job regardless of gender. Women who desire advancement in organizations must take the initiative to engage in career planning follow-through on the resulting career plan. Women must recognize that successful career planning and advancement in organizations are dependent on people beyond the individual doing the career planning and seek support from peers, mentors, advisors, and advocates who can positively contribute to their success. Female executives must take responsibility for informing and educating junior women about the unwritten rules for advancement and encourage women, minorities, and men to engage in career planning early and often in their careers. Organizational leaders and human resource management professionals must develop and implement mentor programs that ensure women gain access and support from mentors at executive levels. Females who seek career advancement must make networking a priority and create visibility for themselves inside and outside their current organizations. Women in organizations must find the confidence and strength to openly discuss gender bias as it presents itself in the workplace. And organizational leaders must implement policies and practices to ensure female workers can voice concerns without fear of retribution or negative implications for future advancement. Educational leaders must encourage career planning in a broad sense during the first 2 years of college and provide students with tools, information, and training necessary to develop a solid foundation for lifelong career planning. Women must take advantage of the tools provided by educational institutions and should seek support for career planning after graduating from college. Likewise, organizations must help women continue efforts toward career planning by offering self-assessment tools, access to mentors, training and development opportunities, and insights into career paths and potential advancement opportunities within the organization. Women who desire advancement to executive levels in organizations must engage in career planning activities that enhance self-awareness, increase visibility into development and advancement opportunities, facilitate networking, and establish mentoring relationships with individuals who can provide advice, coaching, and support. Organizations must promote the formal career planning programs, development programs, and tools available within the organization to make it more likely that employees will become aware of and engage in career planning. Organizational leaders must empower human resource management teams to design and implement comprehensive career planning and advancement programs that inform and empower managers by making it possible to more efficiently and effectively match employees to development and advancement opportunities. Organizational leaders must provide managers and human resource departments with the necessary resources for successfully implementing and maintaining career planning and advancement programs. Finally, the findings of the study inspired the development of the comprehensive organizational career planning model, which can be applied for women, men, and minorities in organizations. Figure 1. Download figure. Open in new tab. Download PowerPoint. Figure 1. Comprehensive Organizational Career Planning Model. Although the comprehensive career planning model developed for this study has not been tested, the model was developed by the researcher to address the need for career planning support in organizations and incorporates the findings of this study. The model demonstrates a perpetual process for development, feedback, reflection, and learning that has a strong foundation of continuous organizational support. Investments in organizational development programs that address all elements of the comprehensive organizational career planning model would benefit individuals and organizations by cultivating employee engagement, increasing job satisfaction, providing visibility into opportunities for advancement, increasing employee retention, reducing turnover costs, increasing productivity, and enhancing visibility and insight for succession planning. Limitations. The limitations of the study included population size and geographic area, which make it impossible to generalize the results across the broader population. Other limitations include self-reporting by study participants and researcher as interviewer, which may have introduced bias. Participant responses may have been consciously or subconsciously influenced through nonverbal cues or tone and manner in which the interviewer asked questions. Although research protocol was examined by experts prior to pilot studies to mitigate the potential for bias in interview questions and focus groups were used to provide validation through triangulation, a researcher's engagement in the process may introduce bias and affect results. Researcher bias was also possible in the interpretation of results. Conclusion. The findings of the study have implications for individual career management, employee retention and productivity, and for closing the gender gap in organizational leadership. Career planning can empower women, men, and minorities to seek out and pursue development and advancement opportunities. Engaging employees in organizational career planning programs and supporting career planning efforts may serve to increase employee retention and boost employee loyalty, while serving to close the leadership gap at senior levels in the organization. Engaging highly motivated employees in career planning and advancement programs may also serve to better ensure that the best person is chosen for the job regardless of gender. The findings in this study are significant for providing managers and organizational leaders with additional insights into the benefits for organizations and the benefits and barriers for women with regard to career planning and advancement in organizations. The findings may help policymakers and organizational leaders design future models and programs to aid with career planning and advancement in organizations, and for creating organizational cultures and structures that are increasingly gender neutral. These findings may also provide organizational leaders with additional information about the factors influencing the lived experience of female employees with career planning and advancement in organizations, and help educational institutions develop programs and tools that help students develop awareness for the importance of career planning to advancement. Future research may include repeating the research design, method, process, and protocol in other geographic areas of the United States to further explore the lived experiences of female executives with career planning, or to investigate the lived experiences of male executives with career planning and advancement. Recommended future research would also investigate the emotional and experiential implications for women who verbalize concerns about gender bias and gender inequality in organizational systems. Finally, future research should be conducted to explore the implications of incorporating the comprehensive career planning model in an organizational talent management system to address the perceived need for support in organizations to address the challenges of career planning and advancement.